Hello, welcome back to another episode of Relatively Damaged Live. My name is Angela, and this is
Kat.
We got the direction right.
Yes.
The live shows are currently streamed on Mondays to Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. Remember to follow and subscribe, or share with your friends, or all of the above, okay? On the Monday segment of our show, Kat and I talk about things we find interesting for about 30 minutes. Today's topic, I don't know, is your opinion valid? Because I'm pretty sure mine is. If you can't tell, we're going to be feisty today.
It's funny because we actually had this topic on our list for a while, and we started to get into it, and it was like, no, let's put it off. So, usually we agree on things, and this time I think we might have some dissension on it. Mm-hmm. So why do you think your opinion is valid?
What's my opinion?
Well, okay. So that is the nature of opinions. Uh-huh. It is an opinion. And I think what we were kind of getting into is, yes, everybody has a right to their opinion.
Right.
Or I should say your opinion is valid in terms of, it's your right to have an opinion. I think for me, is that an absolute right?
To have my own opinion? Is it everyone's right to have their own opinion? I think that's what you're asking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have this belief that I live in here. Like I have, this is kind of funny. Like all of our worlds are our experience. My world is my experience, and how I interpret what other people do is also my experience. And then there are stories I tell about those interactions that become my opinions. And also sometimes I think they become fact because I become angry, frustrated. I'm certain that they did something a certain way. And then I can go back to them and have a conversation. Now, was my opinion valid when I believed all those stories in my head? Well, yeah. And when I go and talk to them, I might learn some new information where I get another chance to either stick to my original opinion, which most times I believe is fact. Again, I'm just really reiterating that. Or I can shift to a new opinion or a new idea, and go from there. Does that help you with kind of what my beliefs are on this?
Okay. All right. In light of what you just said, I'm going to read one of our famous quotes by Adam Grant. And it says, "You're entitled to your own opinions in your head." Of course, you live in your head. You do that. That's my commentary there. But we're going back to Adam Grant now. But if you choose to express them out loud, it's your responsibility to, number one, ground them in logic and facts. 2, explain your reasoning to others. And 3, change them when better evidence emerges. And when he put this up, he actually said, I reserve the right to change my mind on this.
Yeah, and I'm not certain I agree with it 100%. Because, you know, if it exists in my head, if my opinion exists in my head, and if I choose to express it, I don't have to ground it in logic and facts. Why would I have to ground it? What would be why? It's my opinion. It and and that would just be if I wanted maybe to bring someone else to my side, I think. I see you have something to say, so I want to give you.
Well, see that I think the key here to this thing, if you choose to express them out loud, and you and I can have this conversation, and we can talk about certain things, like we've talked about, this happened and this is how I see it, and we've had these conversations where we say, well, wait a minute, let's take a step back. Mm-hmm. Because where is that experience coming from? And so it's coming from this place. It may come from an emotional place. It may not have that fact. I may not be keeping in mind what's going on with the other person. And the idea is, when we talk through that, it's having that curiosity about really what's going on with inside myself, what's going on with the other person who could be involved with. It's having that open mind to be able to have a discussion about it, and to be able to change my mind about something. But if you're not open to change your mind, you're like, this is the reality, and it's absolute, and that's my opinion, and I'm entitled to it. Where does that get you?
Well, again, I think here we go. Is it nice if I ground it in logic and facts? Is it nice if I explain my reasoning? And is it nice if I change my opinion when better evidence emerges? Yeah, that's nice, but no one has to do that. Like, to me, when I read this quote, because I love Adam Grant. I don't know how many of you guys know that. I really do love the research he does. To me, I read this as, here is an instruction manual, and you must follow these rules if you have an opinion. And while it is helpful for better communication to have these other things going on, right? These tools, I don't know that I don't want to hold on to it as a hard and fast rule, because as soon as I hold on to this as a hard and fast rule, I'm going to go around. This is just me, because I am Angela. With this idea that, well, you didn't ground it in logic and facts, you didn't, explain your reasoning, and, better evidence has emerged, and therefore you must change your mind, right? Like, I get into this, I'm right and you're wrong from an opinion.
What? and I get that. I think we all fall into that trap. And it's real interesting. So I've been reading this book by David McRaney, You Are Not So Smart.
Okay, I concede I'm not. You're right. No.
I'm not calling you out, but it talks about all these different kinds of biases that we have, and the things that we tell ourselves, and the real kind of truths behind them. Mm-hmm. And we become entrenched in those ideas. And I really think what Adam Grant is trying to get to in that quote is to say, all right, you form an opinion. And it's your right to form that opinion. But I think it's going a little further. And again, I just pulled the quote. I didn't see the context of it. But I'm thinking, in a civil society, we don't live apart. Yes, you have your own little Angela bubble there, and you can think whatever you want inside your little Angela bubble.
Thank you.
Like I can think of what I want inside my cat bubble, okay? But when we come together, okay, and the idea is that human beings, I think, are social creatures. So if we come together and we start having this, this discussion, Okay. And not necessarily, about something inane like, the sky is blue or it's cold outside or something like
Oh,
that.
we can have an opinion about that now? Because
Well, we can, I guess. You
I'm
know,
sorry, this is me being feisty.
but let's talk about, things that, um we're talking about, different societal issues.
Yeah.
We can
No,
always go to our favorite thing. And the thing is that when we come together, we have that, if you just say, no, it's this way, and I say, no, it's that way, we're never going to come together. And I think that's what he's trying to say. When you express it to others, you have that responsibility, because you have that responsibility to be a member of society and to interact in that way.
right. And I think that actually Jan was here, and I'm not sure if he's still here, but this is what he said. There's an old adage that opinions are like blank holes. Everyone has one. But
and they all stink.
They do. But to Kat's question, opinions are fine to have as long as they're not trampling on the rights of others. And I really think maybe that's where you're coming from, is by having my opinion, because I'm going to take full responsibility for being the opinionated one. Okay. By me having my opinion, it could impact other people. In fact, I think it does. Right? Like, no matter what my opinion is, if I start sharing that opinion with other people, then chances are they will take it on as they will take it on as fact. And it was just oh, good, Jan, I'm so glad you're here. And it was just an opinion. I don't know, just an opinion is a good way to talk about opinions, but because they seem small and not important. And yet I think there's a book I read many years ago called On Bullshit by Frankfurt. I think it's Harry. And then he actually had to write a second book, because while he had written it as like a farce, right? Like, we need more bullshit in this world, jokingly, like from a sarcastic perspective, many people read it as if it was true and factual. And so he wrote another book called On Truth. And it's, what do they say, a lie will circle the world. There's a saying, we'll go around the world so much faster than truth. So, and I think opinions can also fit into that box. But like I said earlier, I get nervous when it comes to saying, that people, that people aren't entitled to their opinion. They can have their opinion. I don't have to buy into it. I don't have to believe it. But also, it can also still cause trouble. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And here's where I think that the trouble calls, and that's comes into play. And that's where I think the responsibility. This is my opinion. I am a firm believer that with rights comes responsibility. Mm-hmm. So if I think, well, if I have the right to eat whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want, and then I say I'm a cannibal. It's absurd.
Okay. Go with it.
So I'm a cannibal and I want to eat you. So I know.
Jan said bingo,
Exactly. So my right to be a cannibal would infringe upon your right to life.
Right.
And to bodily autonomy and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. And I'm taking a very extreme, absurd example, because just for the record, I am not a cannibal. I have no desire to eat people.
But I am opinionated.
I am when it comes to this. So That's where the responsibility comes in, though. I have a responsibility to be a member of society and to come to a set of common rules. That's why we have rules and laws, to promote the general welfare
Mm-hmm.
of our society.
Which is
And
based on opinions of what other people believed would be important to have a working society
it well,
on some level, right?
yes. But at some point there has to be some kind of an agreement in order for us to function.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm over here with the cannibals and you're with the non-cannibals, well, hey, you're infringing on my right to be a cannibal, so I'm going to do what I need to do to be a cannibal.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, so we have to come we have to have that responsibility to come together.
Right.
So you could disagree with me on
Well,
that, and I'm fine. I'm entrenched in that opinion.
Yeah, if we want to live in peace and harmony, I think we do. But I also think there are probably people out there who that's not their desire. Maybe but again, we're coming. I mean, I think probably I'm thinking of like psychopaths or things like that where there is no empathy. There is no, hey, let's come together. There is no coming from love because it's not experienced the same way, right? Like,
Well, I'm looking even societal delusions, and I call them delusions. So there's a book by Timothy Snyder called On Tyranny, and it talks about the rise of fascism in the 20th century, and the societal delusion, or how society reacted to those people who were trying to get power and who did get power, and how they responded. So people look and they say, how could the Holocaust have happened?
That just reminds me of the Stanley Milgram experiment, which there is a movie, Experimenter, I believe is what it's called, where there was a Confederate, and then the person being studied who signed up for the study came in, and the person in the white coat showed the person the Confederate, and then the Confederate goes into the other room, and this person gives out this test. They're supposed to test the person in the other room, and if they don't get the answer right, shock them up to like something like I don't know how high is high, but I want to say it's like 450 volts or something. I have no idea, but I know it's a lot. And during the study, I mean, the person in the white coat, all that they said was, you must continue with the experiment. If the person questioned whether or not, like, do I really need to shock them? There was no instruction. There was no yes. There was no, just you need to continue something, like you need to continue with the experiment. Little did they know continuing with the experiment was yes or no, right? Like, and then it was cut short because these people really believed they were injuring someone in the other room, and it only took a person in a white coat saying you need to continue, but people not thinking, like in that high stress situation, that they even had another choice. So I just really wanted to bring that up because I think it's an important lesson.
And it is. And then you take something, so that's a simple experiment. Okay. Then you take something in a real live experiment, i.e. real world, and you start doing campaigns of disinformation. And then if anybody calls out your disinformation, they're false media.
Right.
Or they're false. So you start accusing them.
Where we're going.
I'm not trying to go there as much as I'm trying not to go there.
Yeah. Well, it is like whitewater rafting, where if you look at the rock, you will inevitably hit the rock. Like it for me, it's like trying to avoid it. I look at it, and so I hit it.
Well, here, so it, in this book, there are all kinds of things that we think. So, like confirmation bias.
Right.
So, confirmation bias is the misconception is your opinions are the results of years of rational, objective analysis.
That's not true, though, right?
Right. The truth is, your opinions are the result of years of paying attention to information that confirmed what you believed, while ignoring information that challenged your preconceived notions. So
right. So if
let's go back in history a little bit. So Ronald Reagan famously talked about the welfare mothers. Mm-hmm. So that was over 40 years ago. So for 40 years ago, there is this preconceived notion that all the people who are on welfare are African American, poor, unwed mothers looking to game the system. Right. And the reality of that is so far, it is so incorrect.
Right.
When you look at the statistics and you actually look at the information. But because somebody in power, mm-hmm. and he did that because he was trying to get votes, he was trying to get in power and being able to do that. So he created this story. And that story to many people became fact. Right. It became their opinion. And that's what I'm talking about, having the responsibility. So a lot of times people have an opinion and they will express it in order to try and influence, because their goal is not to have love, the common welfare of everyone involved. They're trying to get a specific goal, power.
Right.
In one way or another. And so when people call that out, most people, they're willing to say, well, yeah, I know that person, over there, and they were on welfare and they happen to be African American. And so, yeah, so that confirmed that bias.
Right. It puts it into a bucket. And just to even simplify it even more, I think what confirmation bias is if we just look around the room we're in or wherever it is right now and look for anything the color brown. And just look. Give you a second. Let me just ask you, was there anything that maybe was not quite brown that you turned brown? I mean,
no, I got a lot of brown things in here.
but the point is, like, I have these, I have some frames in my room that probably are not quite brown, but they were brown enough for me to decide they were brown. And I think that's what happens with confirmation bias, right? Because they have like a goldish bronze, but there's some brown in it. I mean, bottom line is, what I'm trying to say is, in my mind, while they were not just brown, the confirmation bias side of me says, well, they're brown enough to fit into this bucket, which I think is what you're trying to say happens with confirmation bias. It's close enough, and our brains do it automatically, right? So,
right.
Being open to being disproven, once I've decided, and we can get into what decisions are, right? Once I've decided to own that opinion, I'm in real trouble, because chances are I am going to dismiss anything that could possibly show me I'm wrong. Even you could show me all kinds of information about the color brown or whatever. You can fact check me. I'm not going to buy into it. I'm going to say, but this and this and this and this and this, and I'm going to come from the other side. It could turn really ugly if you think about it.
Yeah. Well, here's another thing. So this is the availability heuristic. The misconception is, with the advent of mass media, you understand how the world works based on statistics and facts culled from many examples. So take this example. Anybody should have, if they were really interested, should have gone and looked at those facts. We didn't have the access that we do today, but we did have libraries, and libraries are wonderful places, and all that facts was there in the 80s. I know for a fact. But the truth is, you are far more likely to believe something is commonplace if you can find just one example of it. And that's exactly what Reagan did. You're far less likely to believe in something you've never seen or heard of before. So you find that one example, and everybody, most people know of one example. So it's like, oh, okay, so Reagan said this, and so many people believed it because they found that one example.
Right. And, the other thing I just really want to point out is we don't have to believe the other person's opinion. Like, a lot of times I think we do take it on and not investigate. I can really only speak for myself. I take it on and I don't investigate because it's too much work. And heaven forbid, I mean, all the stuff you have to read, the confusing numbers you have to look at. I mean, why, and a lot of times the way these things are worded, like, just to be a scientist, you have to know a whole other language anyway.
Yes. Well, now here's the interesting thing. So this all goes back on, again, our having our opinions to ourselves, but the kinds of things that we have to guard against. So the argument from authority, the misconception, you are more concerned with the validity of information than the person delivering it.
Right. That would be a value, though. Like, if I live that value, right?
Well, no, let's say, and I don't want to get into the virus, but just say Dr. Fauci comes on. He comes on and he's the example out there. So, Dr. Fauci says it must be true.
Right.
Okay. So, and then people, some people don't get anything more of it,
Right. But then my values say, I want to go check it. Got it.
Well, the truth is the status and credentials of an individual greatly influence your perception of that individual's message. So you're not listening maybe to what he's saying. You're like, Dr. Fauci says it, so it's okay.
Right.
Because that's what you're doing. That's where the truth is you're just, okay, he's saying this, it's okay.
So at that point, it's still an opinion. It's not, it's all opinions, but I haven't done any research.
Exactly. And that's kind of the point, is to say, okay, this is one man's opinion. Now, granted, it is based that he is an authority in that. And whether or not you decide to believe that is, again, you have to check, are other authorities in agreement with him? Go ahead.
Right. If I don't understand what he's saying, right? Because I also believe that authorities can start to lean on each other and get stuck in confirmation bias. And then because scientists do, right? So then we get into the trouble of, well, now we have skewed science because everybody started going, we're going to, going with their confirmation bias, whether they realized it or not. So I think on some level, sure, your opinion's valid and it still might be wrong.
Right. Well, and I think, again, this goes to, I think we agree that your opinion is valid. When I think where we have a little bit of a disconnect here is, what responsibility do we have when we state what our opinion is? What kind of influence do we have? What kind of responsibility do we have when we are saying these things to people? I find a lot of things on social media where people say this stuff, and I always want to ask, where's your source? Where's your source? Because I want to be that kind of person who is thoughtful in stating what my opinions are and being able to base them in fact insofar as I can. I mean, obviously, like, here's a silly example. Some people love cilantro, some people hate cilantro, because for some people it tastes like soap. I happen to be a cilantro lover. But I can understand if you think it tastes like soap, you might not like it.
Right. And that's okay. No one has to like
Right.
it. I think.
But if I were to say, oh, don't eat that cilantro because it tastes like soap, you'd be
Yeah,
like,
again, I think. Oh, go ahead.
you have to have your own experience of it. And
Right.
the experience of things could be as simple as trying cilantro, or it could be as complex as really taking the time before I'm forming an opinion. Admitting and understanding what an opinion really is and where it comes from, and these fallacy traps that we can find ourselves in, and saying, if I'm really going to state that opinion, I need to investigate a little bit further before I share that, or share it at least with a disclaimer. This is my understanding as of now, or this is my opinion as of right now,
Mm-hmm.
based
Yeah, I
on
think,
the information I have.
and I think that could be a disclaimer in front of everything we say. This is my opinion right now, right? Like, I hadn't really thought of it from that deep. Well, I don't know if that's deep or shallow level, right? Or more simplistic. That it can all be opinions. And yeah, I'm still not totally reconciled on this whole thing. There's just so much to talk about here, and really, because I think if we get into it too much further, I just worry that the only way around it is, well, you must believe what I believe. So, and then again, that's my opinion, and I just can get myself into a little bit of trouble right here. Do you understand what
And
I'm saying? Do you see
I
where I'm coming
understand what
from?
you're saying, and what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say is, yes, it's okay to have your opinion, but be open-minded.
Mm.
Don't become entrenched. Be willing to listen to others. Be willing to experience something different. Be willing to see the other person's point of view. So, have your opinion. Just don't close your mind. Be curious.
Thank you so much, Kat. Well,
Thank
we are
you.
past our 30 minutes today. You know what? I'm trying to think of the closing.
You're Angela, and I'm Kat.
I am. I'm Angela, and that is Kat. And there is also a Relatively Damaged podcast you can listen to wherever you listen to your podcasts, where I interview amazing guests that have overcome some sort of struggle and how they found hope and healing. Lots of opinions on that podcast. You can find us everywhere. We'll see you next week. Thanks again.